Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite writing podcast.
Woohoo.
Is it your first time here? Don't worry. We will be your favorite.
Yeah, well, we will make ourselves your favorite no matter what.
Is this your first time listening to a writing podcast? Because then we're your favorite by default and you can't say otherwise.
Exactly. Gosh, what a good loophole.
That is a really great loophole. I like that. My mom used to say, Ash, you're my favorite middle child. And I was like, oh, wait, every time. Or you're my favorite oldest daughter. And I'd be like, oh, wait, every single time.
Yeah, I'm an only child. So like my parents would be like, you're our favorite kid. I'm like, well, gee, thanks. That means so much.
Yeah, like if they said that you weren't their favorite kid, this is when there are some concerns.
It's true. So we have puppies now, and my dad counts those as children. So I'm now the middle child because we had two dogs when I was growing up, and now we have two that are younger than me. So I have become a middle child when I used to be a youngest.
That is funny.
It's a transition. Yep.
My family never considered pets children. Javi and I do because I don't know, we just do. So like Flora is actually Yennefer's older sister, but you would never know because she's smaller and acts like a kitten, and Yennefer acts much older. And then Lily, by some weird, so Lily is staying with me. She's my old kitty cat who I love so much, but she didn't move with us because she stayed with my mom because she's old and hates our cats. And so she's very happy with my mom, but my mom's moving in with us soon. And so basically my mom couldn't watch her this week because she had to like go house sit. And so we took Lily. We were like, it's great. Lily will get used to everything anyways, but she's like much older than all the other animals and so unhappy. And I just haven't figured out like how to tell our cats how she relates to them in a familial way, because she was my daughter, but she kind of became my mother's daughter in the way that
she's
like
your sister daughter.
Yeah, she's my sister daughter, because sometimes my mom to Lily will be like, did you hear what your sister did today? Like about me. And I'm like, I was her mother at one point. So I don't know if I'm like, Flora, Yennefer, meet your much older sister, or if I'm like, meet your aunt. I think probably that's more accurate for them. So meet your very elderly, very grouchy aunt who will not come out of her room. So
cool.
Yeah. Anyways, that one over there, the only child, aka middle child if you're counting dogs, is Karissa Hartlow, aka Catherine, aka Lewis. I'm Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien, middle child through and through.
In all ways.
In all ways. In all those ways, people are like, you're such a middle child. Yeah, I am.
Correct.
What about it? Correct. True.
Accuracy.
Yeah. Anyways, how has your week been?
Oh, I've had a great week. Okay, so one has to do with the writing update, so I'll wait till the end. Then it rained for the first time, the first of the season. It was only for like 5 minutes, but it was great. And I learned that the puppies are not pluviophiles. They did not like the rain. They were kind of confused. They didn't hate it, but they were like, why is water falling from the sky? Which seems fair because they've never seen rain before.
That's fair, I guess.
Yeah, I had to walk into the rain first so they would follow me. And then they're like, we don't like this. We're going back.
This is wet. I didn't sign up for this.
And they finally got to have their first like official guests. My grandparents came over, and then my aunt and uncle and cousins. So they got to meet them, which was fun. And then I have rediscovered the dollar store, which
rediscovered.
Yes, I haven't been to the dollar store in forever. And I went the other day, and it is amazing. I don't know.
It is amazing.
How I lost track of this. I got so many things. Store. I got nail polish. I got this nail polish. I don't know if you can see it. It's like this periwinkle color. It matches nothing I own. It doesn't match any of my clothes. It doesn't match any of my furniture. It doesn't match my headphones, but I love it. And I'm going to wear it anyway. And I got like 5 colors. Nice. So that was fun. I got this little, those like tea dispensers that you like click the button and it'll pour tea into your cup. No. Like the big jugs that you have at parties.
Yes.
Press the button and I got a mini one of those for water in my room, so I never have to leave.
Oh my God. Oh no.
So good.
You did not need that.
What else did I get? I got some other cool things. Oh, I found books. They have books at the dollar store. One of them is the third in a series, which I kind of suspected, but bought anyway. And the other one is this kind of obscure sci-fi thriller that I'm excited about.
Heck yeah.
I went crazy. I went in with $24. I was like, this seems reasonable for a dollar store visit. I had like 5 things on my list. I thought that's all I was going to get. My total came out to $24.46. So I spent the 24 and I gave her 2 quarters. And I'm like, this is the most perfect day I've ever had. It was
That's
so
how
good.
the dollar store makes their money, is because you go in and you're like, I just got to get a few things, but you're like, but wait, $1 is an excellent deal for everything in here. So then you end up spending what you would have spent going somewhere else for just those 5 items.
It's so true. And I got this lipstick. I told Ash I'm testing to see if I am a lipstick person.
It looks beautiful.
So thank you. I thought it was a little orange for me, but like I'm wearing orange like shirt. I'm wearing an orange
really
shirt.
nice.
And so I think it looks good with that. So we'll see. Anyway, it was a great time. And I don't know why. It was fun. So that was cool. And that was my week. Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm looking at you through the computer, so it might be slightly different, but I think I've always thought you have kind of like a peaches and cream undertone, which can be kind of hard to match. And because you picked a kind of orange peachy lipstick, at least on here, it looks totally natural, but like like a little vavoomy. So she logged on and I was like, oh my God, you look like a princess today. And you picked somehow that like weird periwinkle color on your nails also looks really nice with your whole, like what you've got going today. So you do have like very like princess, like natural princess vibes, but still a little vavoomy. I like it. I love lipstick, obviously. So excellent work.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I know we started this conversation and Ash just immediately went in with the compliments. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like such an ego boost. Thank you.
I just say what I see. People are always like, oh my God, thank you. And I'm like, I'm just being honest. Because people will be like, you're so nice. And I'm like, no, I'm really not.
No, I'm just calling it like I see it.
The truth right now. Yeah.
That's good. That means none of your compliments are false.
No,
I
don't
believe
do
them to be
false
true.
Compliments. I always find something that's accurate to say for a compliment. Like I won't give false compliments. I might give compliments when I don't feel like giving compliments to some people, like if they've given you one, but you're not like really into the conversation or you don't particularly enjoy them. And you're like, I don't really want to give you a compliment, but now that I have to, I'll like find something that's accurate.
Right. Exactly. How about your week? How was your week? Did you go to the dollar store?
I did not, unfortunately. So therefore my week was not as good as yours because the dollar store is just like paradise, is nirvana.
Best purchases of my life. That's all I'm saying.
I added these cool sunglasses to my little cart from Pella Case because we all needed new phone cases. My whole family uses Pella Case. So I thought I'll just order them all at once because they're all of ours we've had for years and are falling apart. And we'll get new ones. So we don't have to pay shipping because we'll do like the bundle or whatever. But they have sunglasses now too. And these sunglasses are so like 90s. Like I'm pretty sure in Twister, the main character, I think she wears these sunglasses. You know, like the ones that are like kind of like they're kind of smallish. But for some reason, I really like those. And I like them with curly hair. And I don't know why. Because if I try to push them back into my hair, they will get caught in my hair. So that's a no-go. But I added them to my cart and then I took them out because they were too much money. But I was like, I've established for myself that I at least like this style. And it was that. Anyways, that's as close as you sharing your shopping experience. That was as close as I got to a shopping experience.
It's sometimes like a really big deal to just be like, all right, I've decided I like this. I don't have it yet, but it's in my repertoire of things I like. And that's a big deal sometimes.
Exactly. I do that like a few times a month. And then I add whatever the item is to I call it my self-care wish list on Pinterest, because occasionally because I'll go through, I've probably said this before, I'll go through periods where months at a time, I don't spend any extra money on myself. And then all at once I'll buy like 2 or 3 things. And so now instead of being like, what was that thing I really wanted? I didn't save it anywhere. Now I just can go to my little wish list and go pick like 1 or 2 things off of it. But of course, like I feel like the older I get, everything on it is more and more expensive. So ain't that the way? I got to go back to the dollar store living, man. You never know. You never know what I find there. Yeah. But aside from my non-shopping experience, it has been insanely hot here. I probably said that last week, but just for an update, the heat has not abated. I'm still sweaty because I had to go out and water my plants for the second time today. By plants, I mean seeds, because all of my plants died. I had been carefully nurturing them in their little greenhouse. And then I was feeling like they're big enough. Like I need to just go ahead and transplant them. I hope that they'll make it through the heat. They didn't make it through the heat. So that was dumb. I'm not like a super experienced gardener. So this is probably my fault. However, I still really want/need to grow vegetables. So I like put more seeds in the ground, even though these are technically ones that do better transplanting. So I'm just crossing my fingers. and I've been watering them for days, and I was really sad because I didn't see any little sprouts starting. And even this morning I went out there and there were no sprouts. I just went out there just now, that's why I'm still sweaty. Like I said, I'm still really, really hot. But around the corn, all of my black-eyed peas have sprouted.
Yay.
Yeah, so not this morning, but just in like the last like 8 hours,
Cool.
they have sprouted up, and they're so
fast.
So good. So fast. And I'm excited because it looks like one of my cucumbers is like sprouting again, because I had the most beautiful cucumber plants. Like they were full on cucumber plants and they died. They just withered into nothing in the heat.
Yeah.
So now I'm watering twice a day, which apparently I was supposed to do anyways for seeds, but like novice gardener over here. So hopefully everything will continue to grow. My corn has been happy. My corn was fine being watered once a day, but it's still growing, is very tall. There's my farm update for you guys. And if anybody wants a dog or multiple dogs, would you like to take my dogs? This is a joke. I love my dogs, but they are the worst. Well, Winnie, I don't know if he was digging into my garden bed or he just did this thing where he leapt through the garden bed, like directly through the bed. And so she was like an avalanche, because I have them built into like these mounds. So it's a mound. He went straight through and just took everything out with him. It was like an earthquake. It was horrible. And so I was a little bit mad because the stuff that the heat hadn't killed, Winnie killed. And so Winnie did that. Winnie has split open 2 bags of charcoal in the patio in the last week, because he'll find them wherever they are and destroy them. He'll do it with anything you leave outside. Javi got a bunch of plastic for the greenhouse that he's building, like a bunch of like plastic walling stuff. I just found it this morning, dragged out of the garage by Winchester and like all chewed up. So yeah, if anyone wants a Winchester, the dog, not the dog rifle or the mystery house, we have one. I'm just kidding. I'm not getting rid of him, but I am mad. And then Brownie pooped in the house twice this week, and she's housebroken, very house trained. So Javi's over here going, no, she's gone. He's gaming right beside me. I was furious. I was like, why is she doing this? And I think she's still in protest because she's not allowed to be outside by herself anymore. She has to be outside on a leash, because she's a chicken chaser and a cat chaser. And barnyard cat Raul. Did I tell you about Raul? Okay. He's still hanging around. He's a cutie pie. Yay. And when she's on her leash with him, she's perfectly fine. Just like she's perfectly fine with the cats indoors. But if she sees him from a distance and she's on her leash, or she gets off her leash, she just has to chase him. Or if she's on the leash, she just whines and whines and whines for like 20 freaking minutes trying to get off the leash to go chase him. She treated him twice the other day when I don't know how she does it, because we even got a special harness to make it hard for her to get out of, but somehow she like wrapped herself around a tree and pulled backwards in this perfect way to like pop out of the harness. And then she treed Raul twice in like 45 minutes. And I was so mad, because I'm like, you're a nice dog. Why are you doing this? So she's such a sweet girl when she's inside, but when she's outside, she's my nightmare. So anyways. Well. If anybody wants a dog, but JK mostly, but also these dogs are killing me. And then the cats were all being bad, and now Lily's furious. I'm just like, could the animals just be chill for a second? And one of the chickens escaped, but I found it, but then I had to tackle it. And then Winnie thought we were chasing chickens. So then he tried to bite the chicken. And now I'm like, well, are you a chicken chaser, or did you just think I was chasing the chicken? Which I was, but not to like bite the chicken, to like retrieve the chicken and put it back in the coop with the other chickens.
We have to keep the chickens safe.
Yeah. So he was like, oh, cool, we're chasing chickens. I can do that. And I'm like, bro, no. And he's like, that's what Brownie does. So
I mean, come on.
Yeah, he's like, I'm pretty sure this is what you're supposed to do.
I think I know what I'm talking about more than you do.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, excuse me, I'm an Anatolian shepherd. Perhaps you missed the word shepherd in there. I think I know what I'm doing.
Right.
I am a farm dog. So what are you? Yeah, so he's a punk, and he's so cute, but he's such a punk, and same goes for all my animals. And that's been my week.
Fun.
Oh, delightful. Yeah. Do you have any book racks this week?
So I'm rereading. I think you did this on That Pretentious Book Club. I'm rereading Lord of the Flies.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So I love this book. It's one of my favorite classics. So yeah, I would recommend it. I think it's important and fun. So
nothing about that being one of your favorite classics surprises me. That is like the ultimate Catherine choice. If you guys are new here, Catherine is Carissa's very dark and scary alter ego that I invented since college, But really, invent is generous. I think Catherine was always among us. I just put a name to her.
It's true.
So that seems like very much a Catherine choice.
Yep.
It is good. Lord of the Flies is good. You guys should check out our episode on that too. I can't remember if Kendall was drunk for that episode. There's a few episodes where Kendall is definitely noticeably tipsy during recording, which is very funny. If you guys want to check out That Pretentious Book Club for some absolute nonsense. Absolute
it's
nonsense. What did I recommend last week?
Name of the Star?
Name of the
Is
Star?
that the book you did? Yeah.
Yes. I can't remember if I mentioned Johnny Tremaine either. Did I?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Well, I also read Johnny Tremaine last week because we've recorded a couple in advance. So Johnny Tremaine, if you guys are looking for a classic that's not too long and you're like into like the Revolutionary like war period, like we should have saved this for the 4th of July and we didn't. We should have just saved the episode. But if you're looking for a good 4th of July read, you want some historical fiction, Johnny Tremaine is excellent. A lot of us had to read it in school, but reading it again, I enjoyed it so much more. Yeah, I mean, just recommendations for that. It's good. It's also kind of funny, and Esther Forbes is an amazing author. So there's my book rec / once again, this is what we're reading on TPBC next week. So yeah,
it's like a little plug for the other podcast, but also kind of on topic.
Yeah, exactly. It works out well that way. What about our word of the week?
Our word of the week is Collywobbles.
Collywobbles.
Collywobbles. And it is intense anxiety or nervousness, especially with stomach queasiness. There's a word for it.
Oh my God. I've got the Collywobbles.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's so good.
I saw my ex walk into the restaurant and I got the Collywobbles.
Exactly. I always feel this way when I'm on my way to job interviews. I'm like, strong Collywobbles going on.
Yeah, hell yeah. Oh my God, that's interesting. It's about like going up on stage for an audition and you get the Collywobbles. Wow. Yep. Or perhaps sending a query letter. Perhaps you get the Collywobbles. You had Collywobbles about opening a query letter the other day.
I did.
Yeah, you had strong Collywobbles.
Yep. I get them a lot. So this word is super relevant for my life.
Excellent. I thought not only that we bring this back to writing, I think we should bring this back to normal conversation. This is so useful. Otherwise you have to say something like all complicated, like I was so anxious, I was queasy. Like that's a whole mouthful. Just say Collywobbles.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a particular kind of anxiety too, like the physical kind that you can't control, even if you know you're being ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it's like, instead of explaining all that, you can just say, yeah, I have the Collywobbles. People can be like, yeah, I know what that means. Exactly. I get that.
It's like butterflies in your stomach, but the bad part, but the bad times, not the good
bad
times.
Parts.
Yeah. Exactly. The bad part is Collywobbles.
Yeah.
Collywobbles, I'm just picturing now as like the evil butterflies.
Oh.
Like
interesting.
Miraculous Ladybug. Anyone? Did you ever watch Miraculous Ladybug?
I did not.
It is a kids show.
Okay.
But it's about superheroes, so I watched it. At least a lot of it. But there's these pretty butterflies or whatever, they get turned dark. And then when the dark like moth butterfly things like land on people, it turns them evil. And then Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir have to like fight that person and then like turn them back into like a normal person. And and not a villain anymore. But that's what I'm thinking of. Is
this a recent children's show that you watched?
Yeah. This was a couple of years ago that I watched it. I worked at a preschool at the time. So that's probably, actually, you know what? That's not even an excuse. I heard of this through Kendall calling her out hard because she introduced me to it actually. Now I'm remembering that. I've definitely used the preschool as an excuse before when I don't want to get into the whole explanation of it, but Kendall introduced me to it and it turns out it's actually kind of delightful. It's also not like a kid show. It's like probably like teenagers probably like it, like preteens and teenagers. I think they're like in junior high or high school, the characters.
Okay.
And it's a French show. But there's also the American version or like the American English like dubbed version.
Yeah.
And it's delightful. I mean, so is the French version, but it's delightful. I think you should check it out. You might actually like it.
I think I should check it out to help me learn French now.
I think
because I'm trying to do that.
There you go. It's good. It's delightful. Anyways.
So Collywobbles. The evil butterflies
are like the dark butterflies. Exactly. In Miraculous Ladybug. Anyone out there who knows what I'm talking about, please message me so I don't have the Collywobbles anymore.
Yeah.
Help me
when you talk about it, you don't have to have the Collywobbles.
I just wondered if my dress was on backwards and I can't tell. It's possible I'm wearing my dress backwards.
Cool.
It's one of those that looks kind of the same in the front as in the back. So
yeah, the tag is the only way.
yeah. Oh, good. The tag's in the back. It felt like
good.
the tag was in the front for a second. All is fine. We're good.
Yay.
Did we get into the theme for this episode?
Yeah. We're going to be talking about the general writing advice, show, don't tell, which if you've been a writer for any length of time or gone through school, you've probably heard before. So we're going to talk about whether or not we agree with it, when we agree with it, etc. Do you want to start things off?
I will start off by saying I think you and I probably have differing opinions to some extent on this.
I know, we'll see.
Because I am generally very pro show don't tell, but that might also be because when I work with clients as an editor, a lot of the people, because I'm freelancing, I mean, I'm back to freelancing and I've been freelancing before. They're typically people who are newer to writing or newer to publishing. And so their work for the most part is not as refined. They don't typically have writing experience or training in writing, because then they would have reached out to their other writer friends, like we do. So like I don't typically go out and hire freelance editors because I have connections. So these people don't. And so for them, that's part of the reason is probably because I'm a little bit skewed because I work with them so much. That for them, I feel like I'm constantly trying to pound into their head, show, don't tell, because I think it's extremely important to show, don't tell. And part of it is because I love conciseness. And I think that show, don't tell is a great way to be really concise. And I think it's a great way of being really respectful of your reader's intelligence, and also letting your readers kind of like read their own subtext into things, which can be really interesting sometimes. Like it's just like in stuff like show, don't tell is like, instead of saying, for an example, if you guys are like, what are they talking about? Although you probably know. And it's like, instead of saying your character feels sad, you could show your character crying or trying to fight back tears or something, so you show what the character is feeling, the actual like physical parts of it, or in their dialogue, rather than like just talking about it. Same with like whatever's going on. I think I really wish that people would use this more when it comes to conversations in books. Like I feel like people tend to use a lot more speech tags than we need to, because I think a lot of that is implied. So I think show, don't tell is actually perhaps best applied when it comes to dialogue, which I feel like is funny because people don't talk about it that much when it comes to dialogue. Yeah. Even more than feeling. Like it's okay to occasionally be like, you could tell she felt blah, blah, blah. Like that's fine occasionally. But like with dialogue, I would say most of the time you should be incorporating at least a little bit of show, don't tell into a conversation. So like instead of saying like, go to the hallway and turn right, Sarah said, brushing back her hair, you would instead change this to Sarah brushed back her head and looked down the hallway. You go down the hallway and turn right. Look at that. We already know who's talking. You didn't have to speech tag it. You kind of did a speech tag, but really you just said what's going on, and your readers will infer that this is Sarah talking. And so that's my favorite way to use it. So I'm generally pro show, don't tell. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule, so I don't think it should be applied that way. But there's my general summary of what I like about it.
As you're talking about this, so like show, don't tell is one of those pieces of advice where it's broadened out, because if you're talking to anyone, the vast majority of people and the vast majority of their writing kind of needs to follow that advice, but there are exceptions. So like when I was in school, there was this big rule, right? You don't start a sentence with because, right? I'm sure you've all heard this.
And hate that rule.
I know. Why? Because generally speaking, most people are going to misuse it at the beginning of a sentence, but it is totally valid at the beginning of certain sentences. So if you say something like, because she had a dog, she took him to the dog park, or something like that, that's a correct use of because. And so like in school, I was like, I'm going to find a way to use because at the beginning of as many sentences as possible. And I did. And I could always tell that my teachers were either impressed or very frustrated that I kept breaking the rule.
That's hilarious.
But it was one of those things where like that kind of advice only applies if you're new, if you're an amateur, if you don't really know what you're doing. And so once you get to like a certain level of expertise, you can kind of throw that rule out, not because it doesn't apply, but because you understand how to break it. And that's where I think show, don't tell comes in. I do generally think it works. I think things are going to be generally stronger if you show them over telling them, but you have to know when to break it, when telling is going to be more concise, or when it's going to be clearer, or when it's going to, not direct the focus somewhere you don't want it. Because sometimes people will show things that don't they'll spend a lot of time showing something that doesn't matter, when telling would have been shorter and it wouldn't have focused in on that thing so much. And so those kinds of situations are when I feel telling is more necessary. But generally, I agree that you should follow that advice. I think so. I was going over in my head, like certain situations. So like you talked about feelings, right? And so I think the big thing with showing versus telling is that you don't want to tell the readers how to feel. And so a lot of time when you say something like she felt sad or whatever, the author is really just trying to tell the reader how they're supposed to feel. Like you're supposed to be sad for her. You're supposed to be angry for her. And that can be frustrating because first of all, I don't need you to spell things out for me, but also because I might feel differently about this situation than the main character does. And so it can be frustrating to be told how to feel. And so I think when it comes to character and theme, which, like you said, you know, you can kind of get subtext going on, which is really important. I think that's when show is most relevant. And then when you get into like setting and plot details where clarity is really important and where you don't want there to be as much room for imagination so much, I think that's when telling can be useful, because
I totally agree.
Like when you have a concrete detail, tell it. When you have something that's open for interpretation, show it. That's kind of my general.
I agree
about it.
I totally agree. And I think you can even do that with feelings too, but you just have to know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because like you said, like when you reach a certain level of understanding that rule and writing in general, then you know how to break the rule. Like I think feelings in general is something like settings. Yeah, you don't really want room for interpretation in settings because you need your specific setting to come through at least some specific details of it, so that you really want to tell and not show. I mean, if you can find a way to show it also, but you need to tell. So stuff like setting or stuff that's really specific. And I think that can occasionally be true for feelings too, but not often. I think for feelings, because when you look at someone else, like you don't look at someone and first go, oh, they're sad. You go, oh, is her face getting red? Like, oh,
yeah, you notice the details and then you put it together.
And then you put it together. And so I think that just because that's how we understand and process other people's emotions, I think that that makes the most sense to show, don't tell for feelings. But there is a time where being really specific can have more of an impact. Like a guy comes home to his wife, right? And they're having a conversation and she's saying stuff like, wow, it would be really great if I had someone to help me take out the trash or whatever, right? And she starts going off on these like kind of like passive aggressive hints and he's not really getting it. Then it finally clicks. He turns around, he sees her looking at him, and the line is just, she was mad, period. Like, oh, period. She was mad, period. This is a great time. So if you're using it, if you're going to tell a feeling, like still show the stuff first, and then you can tell it, you can define it at the end, and it makes it a lot more impactful. That's probably true with a lot of things. I think showing, if you want to tell, that's totally fine depending on what it is, but show first, then define it with a tell. And that can just increase the impact. So you don't need to use that strategy everywhere. But if there's something you're like, I really want people to be like, stop for a minute. Oh, this is what's going on. Then that can be a great strategy to use.
If it's like the conclusion of the thing you've been building up to over a couple of paragraphs, that's where it can be really useful. Yeah, I agree. And speaking about like characters, so like if your character is going to kind of realize something, I think that's also where telling works, because that, especially if you're in first person or if you're in a very close third person, I mean, our realizations come in that form. Like you look at someone, you're like, oh, they're mad. Like you don't necessarily, you put together the details, but in your internal thoughts are saying things like, oh, they're mad, or, oh, they're frustrated, or something like that. Yeah. And like in a broader sense, character wise, I think sometimes authors have this habit. So like show don't tell is mostly a prose thing as opposed to a story thing. But I think it also comes into play in broader stories. If you have a character and you're constantly telling us how brave they are and how kind they are or how smart they are, and they're not showing us those qualities, oh my gosh, that is such a pet peeve of mine. It's so frustrating. You can't do that. That's where showing is really important, because I shouldn't need you to put the word there for me. I should be able to infer it myself based on their behavior. And so sometimes characters will go off on like these little speeches. It's usually like a mentor or a love interest. And they're like, here are all the things I love about you, and here's why I love you. And it just feels like if I haven't been shown that before, if that hasn't been portrayed to me already, it just falls really flat. It makes the characters feel flat, or it makes it feel like they're lying to each other. Yes. And so it is really important from like a narrow prose perspective that you have like a sense of style, and you're showing as much as you can instead of telling. But I also think that on like a larger story level, you need to make sure that your readers are not dependent on the specific adjectives you are attributing to your characters and your world and the plot and everything. You shouldn't have to say that it's exciting. Like, we should be able to feel that anyway. You shouldn't have to say that your character is smart. They should be showing their intelligence. And your characters can kind of realize it about each other. Like you said, they can note, oh, she was mad. And so a character can say something like, wow, you're really smart, if it's being showed to us and they didn't realize it before and they're kind of stating the obvious. But generally speaking, you as the author shouldn't have to put those words in the reader's head. So I know we get really attached to our characters and we're like, gosh, she's so smart and I love her and she's so brave, but you can't say that. You have to show it. So that's where I feel like show don't tell is also really important.
I agree. Well, it's the concept of actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Like that's true in real life. That's true when you're building your characters. I agree. Definitely don't. It's very rare that you can get away with like saying this character is this way and it not feeling kind of flat and kind of like, okay, well, how do I know that that's true? Right. Because actions speak louder than words. So show that, and then other people can realize it. I think an exception to this rule, and an exception to most rules, I just want to point out quickly, because it's one of my other big pet peeves. It's kind of its own topic itself, but it applies to this and other rules, is just remember, in dialogue, show don't tell does not have to always apply within the dialogue or within internal dialogue, because we don't think in show don't tell. We process in show don't tell, but we don't verbally think or verbally speak in show don't tell. So you wouldn't be like talking to your friend, like, oh, did you see Nancy last week? Yeah, her eyes were watering. She was getting all red. Like, you would just be like, yeah, did you see Nancy last week? She was pissed. Like, you would just straight up say it. And you probably would think that on the inside too, which I think you already said. So like, just as an example, also, we start sentences verbally and mentally with because and all the time. And so I hate when I'm seeing people be really proper with dialogue.
You don't need to be in dialogue.
You don't need to. I understand why they are, but you don't have to. Most of the rules that we give you, most of the rules that your teachers gave you, if it is in dialogue and it's because it's the way that people speak naturally, you can break the rule. So
agree. Yeah.
Just as a heads up.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see what else. I guess kind of going off, I think telling can work for setting and plot, and we've kind of already touched on it, but I'm going to go on a little further. And I think the reason for plot you can use telling a lot is because telling is faster. And so like stating something directly is going to make things move a little quicker. Yeah. So I think that's another reason you can use it for plot. And I don't mean like, I guess another way to think about this is really what I'm trying to say is you shouldn't have too many show or tell sentences like crammed together. You should kind of be using them together in conjunction with each other. And I do think having more showing is better, and a lot of this is going to come down to style. But if you have a lot of sentences in a row that are showing, that's going to bog things down, I think. Showing tends to be a little more literary. It tends to be a little more, like thematic and, kind of ambiguous in the air. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And telling is more concrete and literal. And so you want to mix those up, I would think, to create a clearer and yet still interesting picture for your readers. You find that a paragraph isn't working or it feels out of rhythm with the rest of the page. It's probably because you're using more telling, more showing, or not enough together, in pattern with the rest of the page. That makes sense. You want to be consistent as much as possible. And so if you're noticing that something feels off when you're reading through it and nothing is technically wrong, it's probably the rhythm of the thing based on showing versus telling.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Oh, there was something I was going to say about that. No, you're good. I was like, I should write that down so I don't forget. And then I wrote down something else that I wanted to remember instead.
Of course. Throw my notes.
Oh yeah. I was going to say, there's also like a way, kind of like you were saying, like you can use this, you can kind of apply it on a broader scale too. Like I think I use dialogue a lot to move my plot forward. And I've actually had a note a couple times from different literary agents saying that they like the way that I did that, because I think the reason it's appealing is because your dialogue doesn't have to be show don't tell, but it can be. but it's rare for dialogue to naturally be show don't tell. But if you use your dialogue to move the plot along, it's kind of like you progress the plot with show don't tell, even though the dialogue is all tell. And so that's kind of a way to like kind of slip telling inside of showing in a way.
Dialogue is dialogue is kind of inherently a show, because instead of saying he said he was going to the store, you show that he's saying he's going to the store. So it's kind of like this layered effect where you're showing what someone is telling.
Yes, exactly. So like instead of telling, like they entered the room, they were deep in conversation when the door burst open again and someone came in to say the war is starting or whatever. Like instead you could have, people, it's like someone enters the room, hey, Stu, someone says, hey, how is it? And then he gets interrupted. The door flies open. Someone's like, the war is starting. And so instead of telling all of that, you've shown it, and it just makes it a little bit more vivid. That's all.
Yes.
But it's like show don't tell, even though the dialogue is written in tell form, but like you said, dialogue is always kind of show. So that's just one of my favorite things to do. But I think to your other point that you said, I think that if you find that one of your pages is lagging, because this happened to me this week when I was like writing and I was like, why do I feel like I don't know where this scene is going anymore? I feel like it's dragging on. I feel like this is much longer than it was supposed to be. And I looked back, and it's because it's all dialogue. So it's all show in a sense. And so it has nowhere else to go. Like it would take forever to keep telling the story at that pace, at the pace that I write dialogue in. So now I need to do some telling, which is not really my strength, actually. So I need to be better about that. But so if you're finding that a scene is dragging on, it might be time to just go ahead and do some tell. If you feel like it's too much tell, just make a note and go back and check it out later. But like Karissa said, like it's about balance. You want both. Like telling is not bad. Telling without showing ever is bad. So that's kind of it. But I think what I wanted to say before too, that I almost forgot, was the amount of show don't tell that you use is heavily dependent on your style of writing and voice. You do want to use it across the board. I think it's bad writing to not ever use it. However, some people use it a lot more. Some people use it a lot less. Like Karissa said, a lot of show don't tell tends to be more ambiguous and more literary or more mysterious if you're writing something like that. So it just depends, like what genre are you writing? Who were you writing for? What writing styles have inspired you? Like how are you trying to craft your voice as a writer? So just being intentional about what you do or don't want your literary voice to sound like will change things. I feel like a lot of like high fantasy writers do a lot of telling, which is fine because that's the genre. So they can get away with that at a faster pace. Exactly. But then mystery writers should be doing more show don't tell, because if they're telling them, they're giving away the mystery. So
exactly.
You need to kind of understand what the demands are of the genre you're writing in, but also as an author, like what you do. Like there's certain writers you can tell their voice right away. Like Agatha Christie, very definite voice. You can pick up a book and open and go, oh yeah, Rick Riordan, pick it up a book, open it. You can tell right away that it's him because he has such a defined voice. And show don't tell is just a tiny part of that. But like the ratio of show don't tell versus telling, I think that that's like one of the most defining factors of an author's voice.
Yeah. I agree. I think too, you have to think about who your character is, especially if you're in first person. This does count somewhat for third person, but mostly in first. Don't tell things that your character isn't going to notice. Like you as the author can't be interjecting yourself quite as much as you might want to, or as you do in third person. So if your character is a not very observant person, they're probably going to be noticing the show. They're going to be noticing, oh, so-and-so, it has red eyes, or, oh, so-and-so is shaking. They're not going to necessarily put together what emotion those are causing or because of. And so if your character is super hyper observant and they notice that kind of stuff, probably, if they're like a more mothery kind of character, or someone that's, like a detective, like Sherlock Holmes will do that, where he'll go to the conclusion and you're like, how did you get there? And he'll explain it and it all makes sense, but you wouldn't have gone there. So in that case, you want to be telling more, especially from the character's perspective, that they can make those leaps and draw those conclusions. So it has to do with genre and style, but I think it also has to do with the character you're specifically writing in, because
I agree.
the book I was working on recently, my character is very, like, because of a magical reason, very unemotional. And so she doesn't notice emotional cues. And that was really hard for me to write because emotions are so important when writing books. And so I had to find a way for her to notice things, but not necessarily connect them to an emotion. So the readers can get what's going on, even if she doesn't. So sometimes, depending on your character, you kind of have to play around with that. And that's where, maybe showing or telling is going to take on a different proportion.
Is that in first person or third person?
It's in third.
Yeah. In third person.
Yeah,
okay.
Always.
Yeah. See, and third person is something where you can do a lot more telling. And that's why I'm part of the reason I'm so bad at writing third person is because I'm not great at telling. I'm just much better at showing. And when you're in first person, like, you want to primarily show, because when you're in life, your surroundings are showing you what's going on. Like, you're not typically being told stuff. So it makes more sense to have a heavier show rather than a tell if you're writing in first person, because you live in first person that way. But third person, you want more tell. That's the whole point of third person, is that you get that tell. And I'm really, really bad at that. So if you're like me and you're really bad at that, maybe it's time to do some writing exercises. I'm mainly talking to myself right now to try and, like, maybe take a situation that I've written, maybe even go back to some books I'm never going to use again. Take a situation that was written in first person and then try to rewrite it in third person, because it will have to have more tell. Like, it just does. First person is all internal experiences and experiencing the show. So third person has to be, so it's like you flip the ratio almost, like, between first and third person. Like, it really is almost like an opposite ratio. Oh, it's so hard to do. So if you guys are struggling with switching between the two, that really could be why. I don't know if that helps, but I feel like a little bit, like, I didn't realize till just now that's what the main difference is. But I do feel like that gives me something to work on, like how to, like, try and practice flipping the two. Because I think if I could flip the two, I honestly think I would be like 80 to 90% closer to being good at writing third person.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember why I thought of this, but I'm going to say it. I feel like telling is really jumping to conclusions. So, like, you were kind of talking about murder mysteries. In a murder mystery, you don't want to be jumping to conclusions because that would take all the fun out of it. Showing is really just kind of giving readers the lay of the land and then letting them decide what they think is going on. Whereas telling is jumping to that conclusion for them. So depending on what you're trying to do and what secrets you're trying to keep and, like, how observant your character is, you don't want to jump to too many conclusions, which is why I think people say show, don't tell, and why it's typically very good advice. If you're jumping to conclusions, that's where miscommunication is going to come from. That's where confusion is going to come from. And those are not good things typically. And so unless your character is the type that is constantly jumping to conclusions, which can be annoying, so keep that in mind. I think that might be why the advice is typically to not tell, because that's you as an author jumping to a conclusion. And if you're the author, the reader is going to assume you know what you're talking about. And so that can take some of the suspense out. So I don't know, unless you're doing an unreliable narrator type thing.
Oh, which is fun, but is an exception.
Which can work.
Again, it's an exception. There's a lot of exceptions to the rule, but they are exceptions.
Exactly. Because, and that's really what it comes down to. When you have an unreliable narrator and you're telling things that are misleading, that is you doing it on purpose. You are making a stylistic choice. You're doing it on purpose. When it comes to rules like show, don't tell, don't use because at the beginning of a sentence, all of that kind of stuff, really the assumption is that you will end up making mistakes on accident if you don't understand those rules. And so the rules are in place so that if you ever break them, it's only on purpose. Yeah. And that's when it can be effective. And you shouldn't go around just trying to constantly break rules like I did with because in school. Like, you shouldn't. There were times when I squeezed it in and it was technically correct, but, like, not the best choice. And so I think that's where a lot of this advice comes in, where you have to know when to break the rules, but you shouldn't go looking for opportunities to break them. It has to be because you understand your style and the point you're trying to make with your writing, and you just know that's the best course of action.
I agree.
So it has to be on purpose.
I agree. I think you should try to achieve what you're going for within the rules first. And then if you really can't, then you break the rule, because then it's fully justified. But if you use it and it's kind of justified, but kind of you could have done it the right way and you would have had the same effect, then it's not justified to break the rules. Like it would have been just as good if you didn't. And so I think that that's the way to think. And I definitely do that still before I begin a sentence with because or and. I like try and reword it a few times to be like, is there any way I can say this that sounds equally natural that doesn't start with that? And often, almost always when it's in dialogue, but often I just can't find something else because I write in first person. And so a lot of it's internal dialogue if it's not external dialogue. And so we do use because and all the time. So when it comes to sounding natural, it's hard to get around not using those, but you do want to try and see if you can figure it out first. Or like sometimes I find the solution by they start, like they say the first part of what they're thinking, there's a little bit of action that interrupts it. And then they'd say another sentence instead. So then it kind of is like the action's a little bit of a bridge instead of the word because. Like there's a lot of ways you can get creative with it. If you can get creative and follow the rules, it's better than breaking the rules. If there's no way that you can creatively work within the rules to get what you want, go ahead and break the rules. Like this is in fiction. Also, I should say fiction. I think it's very clear that we're a fiction writing podcast.
Not academic.
If you came here for academic writing advice, we have pretty much nothing to offer you.
Tell everything.
Tell everything. Don't show. Definitely tell if you're here for academic writing, and also go find a nonfiction writing podcast. We're not the one for you. I'm sorry. But for fiction, these are the rules / the very, very flexible rules depending on the scenario.
Yeah. Agree. Let's see. What other points do we have? I feel like I had one more. Do you have any more?
I think I said all of my points.
Okay. Show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Anyway, in conclusion, the rule should stand most of the time. If you're gonna break it, know what you're doing.
Yeah, know why you're breaking it. Just make sure you've tried to do it within the proper rules first. Break it if you need to, and know what the effect is. And also, like, as you're building your voice as a writer and your style as a writer, like, just think about how show don't tell plays into it. And then also first or third person, like, just consider the ratio and consider flipping or flopping it, however you need to make it fit. But I think just being intentional, like always, I mean, with all of our advice, especially whenever we tell you guys that it's cool to break a rule, what we generally mean is if you're being really intentional and you understand the purpose of the rule, you're good to go ahead and break it because you'll understand when the rule doesn't really apply. So that's definitely true with this too. If you guys want to chat more about that, we can, about any of the rules that we discuss, but most of them are flexible in certain scenarios. And it's once you get like into the flow of it, or you've had some training, or you've been doing it for a long time, it's like immediate, inherent that you know when the rule is breakable. But if not, then like feel free to like ask people. Like that's why I had people hire me as an editors, because they didn't know when they could or couldn't use like break a rule. And so like ask people. It's fine. Yeah. That's how you learn. I mean, that's how we learn too. So
yeah. I guess my only like concrete thing is that I think generally character and theme should be show, and plot and setting can be tell.
I agree.
But even those are flexible to certain degrees, because those are 4 things that really should be kind of like equal in your story. And so if you balance those, you're going to balance show, don't tell. Yeah, I think. So just to reiterate that point.
I agree. I totally agree. You said setting and characters tell, and
setting and plot is tell. Setting and plot is character tell. And theme are show.
Yes.
Although I will say, another point. Like if you're struggling to determine the difference, I think tell is okay in character if you're saying like they have blonde hair or something about them that is concrete. But if you're talking about a personality trait that is kind of up for interpretation, like they are brave, that should be shown. I shouldn't like necessarily see the word brave. Yeah.
Character traits, not physical attributes.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously an exception to this would be something like Divergent, where the personality trait is part of the world and they are actively categorized that way. But again, that's an exception. You know when to break it. There's a clear purpose to that.
There's an exception to just about every rule.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
but like just don't go doing it willy-nilly. I feel like I had a couple clients who, and I tell these stories on TPBC, if you guys go back and listen, I won't retell all of them here. I had some difficult clients, mostly of the male persuasion, who didn't want to be told anything about anything. So I'm not sure why they hired me to begin with. but they would just break all of the rules willy-nilly for no reason, and then refuse to even listen when I would tell them that, hey, there's a rule here and this is the purpose the rule serves, and you're not serving that purpose with the way that you broke it.
And people can pretty much always tell. Like you said, it kind of becomes an intuitive thing where you kind of just understand it on a level that's not super describable. But people will break rules and be like, well, it's necessary. And like, I could come up with four or five other ways to say this. No, it's not. And so I think sometimes people break rules thinking that maybe they have more of an understanding than they do. And of course, you know, it's hard to gauge your own expertise. I'm probably not as good as I think I am. Some people out there are better than they think they are. But generally speaking, when you're breaking too many rules and you're not doing it in an intentional way, people can tell. And so if you think like, oh, well, so-and-so does this all the time, but it's going to come across differently because they know more about what they're doing. And so I don't break rules thinking that no one will notice, because they totally will.
They will notice. And I think also it's just staying humble as a writer, no matter how much you grow. Like, you want to be confident, but also staying humble is a great way to make sure that you keep improving, and that one of those rules that you habitually break doesn't go by unnoticed by you, because like you said, people will notice and they won't like it. So like, I know like when you were reading something of mine once, you said I use the word suddenly too much. And I know that suddenly is a word you should use sparingly, but I guess I thought I was using it sparingly. And then after you pointed it out, I was like, oh my God, I use this all the time.
Right.
And it's a word that's like, it's almost like a filler word sometimes, or like suddenly is a word where you can almost always apply a show don't tell. It's just, you had to be really creative about it, but that's so much more effective than always using the word suddenly. But I thought I had a grasp of that rule until you edited something for me and you pointed out all of the instances, and I was like, oh my God. So this is also why you want other people to look at your writing. You want other people with some level of experience to look at it, because there's going to be rules that they're really good at, and there's going to be rules that you're really good at, and there's going to be rules where you both think you're really good at them, and it turns out one of you isn't at all.
You get cocky and you're like, I know how to do this incorrectly, and then you read it and you're like, wait, no, it's definitely not right here.
Seriously. So so just talk to your writer friends, let them lay eyes on your work, and be humble. Like, don't be offended if they're going to tell you you're using a rule incorrectly or you're breaking a rule in the wrong places. You want that information. That is invaluable information. If you have somebody who will take the time to read your book, even if you're paying them to, and to give you useful advice, I just don't understand being rude about it, or like completely dismissing it. Because you know how much work and effort goes into not only reading, but analyzing and trying to figure out what some solutions could be. Like, that's a lot of mental energy. So find someone who's willing to do it, and you're willing to do it for them, and be humble. And guys, if you hire an editor, like, obviously this is a PSA for like myself and other editors, but like, listen to them. Ask questions if you don't understand the feedback. I don't know a single editor or editing company that doesn't allow like questions and even like second draft reviews. So ask questions if you don't understand. That's perfectly fine. But like, just be humble and chill about it. Like, nobody has ever reached the epitome of being a perfect writer.
Exactly. Yep. So you got to stay on top of it. You can't feel like, okay, I have that rule down now. You have to keep working at it all the time.
You do.
So fun.
You do. Because I'm like, I'm so good at show don't tell. Guess what? No, I'm not. I mean, I am only when in regard to first person. When we get to show don't tell in third person, I have the ratio all wrong.
Yeah, suddenly telling becomes more necessary.
Hard. Yeah, and I just don't have it down. But like a couple years ago, even I might have been like, I nailed it. I'm so good at show don't tell. Don't eat. Like, I even in third person, I just across the board would have been like, I'm so good at this. I'm not in third person. I think I'm generally pretty decent at it in first person, but I still want other people to read my books and tell me if I've messed up that or some other rule that I like to break. So
exactly.
I think I break a lot of dialogue rules, and for the most part, I think I do okay. But I'm sure there's rules I'm breaking that I don't need to break. So,
well, I mean, and show don't tell is one of those rules where it's not concrete. It's not like a grammar rule, right? Like, do you put the comma inside the quotations or outside the quotations? That's a matter of being correct or incorrect. Whereas show don't tell is really a matter of what are you trying to do here, and are you effectively communicating that point? And I think just generally speaking, what most people are trying to achieve, show is the best option.
Yeah.
Generally.
It generally is. Yeah. I think if you want to evoke a feeling in readers, typically you want to show, because it's how you process the world around you as a human being. So it makes sense that if you want to evoke that feeling in your reader authentically, you would show instead of tell.
Yeah.
So
and telling is annoying when it's about feelings. Don't tell me how to feel.
Telling is very annoying when it's about feelings. Yeah. So just know when and how to use it. Showing isn't bad or necessarily good inherently. Telling isn't necessarily bad or good. It's just the way you use them. And if you use them the wrong way, it just grates. And also it's ineffective. So
yeah. I will say, I have another point. I think the reason this is big advice too is because very naturally, because we process and show and then we speak and tell, I think most people, when they start out writing or when they get kind of lazy with their writing, their instinct is to tell. And so you kind of start there and then you have to move to show, as opposed to starting in the middle or starting at show. And so just, you have to fight that tell instinct. That doesn't mean it's wrong all the time. It's just that you have to fight it when it's getting too much.
Yeah. I will say that's typically the case. Because I mean, I think with all of my clients that I've had, I don't think I've had a single one that does too much show, don't tell.
Right.
As far as I know, I'm the only person who has this issue. And I don't know when it became, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I do think it's more common to be an overteller than an overshower. Don't know why I'm an overshower. I don't know if at some point I was just determined to not be an overteller. So I made overshowing like completely my identity. I don't know if that's what it is, or if it's because I only know how to write in first person completely. I don't know what or how I ended up here.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
But you're there.
I don't want to be here, but here I am. Neither one is better. But I do think that there's more people who tell overshow. I think it's kind of how they teach us in school, like when they give you like little bits of like creative writing homework and stuff. I think it's typically tell.
Yeah. And I think it's easier. And that doesn't mean it's always wrong, but I do think it is easier to tell than to show.
God, I wish I felt that way. I think
that's what I
think
it is generally. Maybe it is me. But...
No, I think it is too. I think that my brain is just wired slightly differently. This might be something that's different between people who are generally third person brains and first person brains. If you guys have feelings on that, you should let us know, because we do come across this a lot where Carissa's like has some instinctual thing that's more difficult for her or more difficult for me or whatever. And it's usually, we found that it comes down to she's a third person and I'm a first person person. Yes. Like it's just the way that we think and process and tell stories and even think of stories in our heads. So I'm curious to know if that's part of that, or if I really am just a weirdo. I'm not offended either way. So if you guys have any kind of insight into that, I would love to know. Like,
let her know if she's just weird.
Just let me know if I'm just weird. I would love to see like a dissertation on like the third person versus first person mindset, like of a human being and the differences or whatever. That'd be so interesting, because I do think I think it implies a lot. Like that could be like 10 episodes. I think that implies so much about a person and their processing and their storytelling. So
I agree.
Not really.
So maybe it does come down to that.
But I don't know.
No, I think so. I think it's possible that show comes easier to first and tell to third. So maybe that's why I think it's easier.
Maybe. And I don't know if maybe more people, I want to know what the statistic is too. Like, I don't know if more people, third person comes more naturally to, because that's what they teach in school. I don't know what. I think when I was really, really young, I wrote scripts for my Little Mermaid movie, which is all dialogue. So I feel like maybe that's why, because I was from a really young age working on stuff that was so dialogue focused, and then like first person stories are so dialogue heavy in comparison to third person. I wonder if that's what just veered me into first person like land. I don't know if that's why. But
the nation of first person.
Well, I wanted to say like first person waters, and then I forgot the word for water, so I said land. The opposite of water.
Total opposite.
I still think I made my point, but yeah, the total opposite. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious. I do think more people are third person. I want to say, because I think more of the stuff I edited was third person, but I'm still limited. Like I don't have like a wide enough test sample to say for sure. So I also want feedback on that. You guys, like, this is why we need you to message us and tell us what you think, because I don't want to surprise anyone, but like, I'm not omniscient. I know you guys thought I was all knowing, but I am not. I'm sorry to break it to you this way.
What a drag.
I know, what a drag. I also realized I was sitting like this with my shoulders up on my ears for like some time now, and I don't know why. I just dropped them again. I don't know.
Fun. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say, actually, after my 3 addendums to our conclusion point.
Excellent. Well, I think it's good. Well, how has writing been going this week?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I finished my work in progress that I had been working on for a while.
You're on a roll.
I know, my magical criminal underground type of story. And gosh, it is so bad, but it's so good. You know what I mean? Like, it's currently not readable for anyone else because there are too many things that I realized as I went on this time. But once I go through and edit it, I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited about it. So it was kind of weird too, because like I'm on a roll. In January, I finished a book and I did it in 6 days. And it was just like a high. I finished that book and I was like, I could climb a mountain right now. Everything was awesome. When I finished this one, I had a totally different experience. I was just sitting there like, yep, I'm satisfied. This feels good. It was like peace as opposed to excitement. So that was really strange. And I think it's because it doesn't feel readable yet. Like, I can't send it to anyone to read because it's just not there. Whereas the other one, it was exciting because I felt like people could read it already. And so I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it was so exciting. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to focus on my Goodreads goal because I'm not super behind, but I'm a little behind. I'm like, okay, I'll start to read. And then I was like,
I've written 2 books and I'm only a little behind on my Goodreads goal. You psycho. Well,
and then I was like, but what if I could write like a bunch of books this year? So I started plotting out my Lord of the Flies remix thing again. And I don't know. So that's why I'm rereading Lord of the Flies, because I'm going through it. I'm doing this thing. I'm going through it chapter by chapter. I'm writing out all of the things in the chapter. And then I'm doing on the opposite page how I could incorporate it into mine in like the different world. So I'm only 3 chapters in because it's not taking me that long, but it's just, I'm planning it now, and I'm realizing all kinds of problems that exist because it's a series. The 2 books I've written this year are standalones in a world that I have known about for like decades of my life because I've been working on it so long. Not like many decades. I'm not that
like
old,
a world that is more real to me than my own.
Exactly. And so this one is a totally new world that has been in my head since high school, but I've only done periodic development for it. And so now I'm realizing like, okay, these 2 characters are too similar. And I also realized that there are 3 separate series I have, or books, that use the name Ian as a main character. Why? Don't know, but I have to change his name now because it's too many Ians.
Interesting.
So I had to change names. I had to I'm clarifying some world details. And then I'm like figuring out, okay, it's a series. How many books do I think it's going to be? Where do I think it's going? And all that kind of stuff. Because I like to know kind of where I'm headed generally. So and some future details to foreshadow in book 1, because that's always fun. So I'm kind of doing the world building at this point, but hopefully I can start to write it soon. I have like 3 versions of the first chapter and none of them just feel right. Like I always get stuck about 3 chapters in. So I'm like, something has to change. And I read through the first chapter of Lord of the Flies and I'm like, I got it. I fixed it. I know what to do. So that's exciting. So we'll see. Maybe I'll write 3 books this year or more.
Oh my God. You're making me feel so, what's the word that men say? I feel so impotent. Yeah. I feel so impotent at the moment.
It's okay. This has never happened to me before. Well, I wrote several books a year when I was in middle school and high school, but since then this has not happened to me. So I am on a roll. I don't mean to brag, but it's been a good year for me.
No, you should totally brag. This is amazing. I'm just so jealous, but like, please brag. It's great because it gives me something to live up to. And it also makes me go, okay, like maybe I can do it. Like she's doing it. Like, I don't think I can do that many, but I do think I can finish the one I'm rewriting in the next couple months or so. That's so exciting. I should have known when you said that you're reading Lord of the Flies that you were working on that again. I should have known. I should have put it together and I didn't, because I've been so excited. I think about that all the time. I'm like, I wonder when she's gonna do that, because I really want it.
I'm doing it now. You can read you can't read the first draft probably, but you can read it before other people. I also do feel like that'll be an easier one to query. I don't know how big Lord of the Flies is in like reader world. I love it. I don't know if other people do. Yeah.
I think everyone knows it. And I think that's why literary agents will be interested in it. I do think that has
and
a
young
lot
adults
of
have to read
value.
it.
Yeah, they have to read it for school. And like, if you don't, then you miss references, and everyone knows it a little bit. And people it's stayed popular since it came out, which means its market value probably won't drop at any time soon. So That's excellent.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good about it. I feel like I'm doing something practical, but also something that I'm going to really enjoy.
That's how I feel about the book I'm reworking right now. I'm like, this feels practical and good and practical, which is nice. Yeah.
So what are your updates? Have you done anything else?
Well, first of all, I just have to say, when you said that you had a character named Ian in multiple books, I just realized I did that with one of the characters in my book I'm writing right now. His name's Aiden. And I just realized I've tried to use the name Aiden in like 5 books. Like, but I've always end up changing it because I always change names. Like I'm never settled on the names I first pick. I'm just like, I know what's happening, but I don't know what their names are yet. But this one actually stuck finally. So I'm finally using the name Aiden. Good. I don't know why. And I just now remember that that's the name of the psycho killer AI robot computer in
Illumini.
Yeah, or Illumini, whatever.
Latin.
I don't know. It's an excellent book.
It is.
I was just like, oh no, that's a sci-fi. Mine is a pretty classic fantasy.
Yeah, it's different enough. It's fine.
Yeah, it's different. I don't have nearly as much progress to report as you because like I kind of hit a wall this week. I hit a wall every time I have to write a new scene because unlike when you're like in the process of writing a book for the first time, when you have to go back and write new material into an old book, like I feel like I'm fighting through writer's block every time I have to write something new.
Well, you're like a new person now, so the story isn't necessarily in the same place. I understand that. Yeah,
it's difficult. I feel like I'm starting from scratch on the first blank page every time I have to write new content in, and so that intimidated me for a few days. And then I was really kicking myself for like, come on, Ash, we were on such a roll. Like you had estimated that it would only take you like 3 or 4 more days of like really focused work to get this rewritten. And then you're going to get to go through your like final phase of editing and making sure everything's good. And then you were going to be ready to send it out for queries. And now that's all delayed. And so I was really kicking myself. And then I was like, you know what? Like it's waited this long for me. Like trying to force myself to write the scene out of the blue is not going to do anything. But I also didn't want to sit down and forget about it. And so I basically gave myself the weekend to be like, okay, it's the weekend. I've been overwhelmed anyways. Like I do need to give my body and mind a rest. So I'm going to pick it up again on Monday. And even if I don't write the scene, I'm going to figure out a few of the things that need to happen in the scene. And so I actually ended up figuring out that if I went back a few chapters and like added this one like kind of disclaimery thing into it, then it would make sense for us to reach the point in this other chapter I now have to write like a new scene into. So that helped immensely. And then I think on Tuesday, I wrote like the beginning of the scene. And then I figured out what else has to happen for the end of the scene. And I just wrote notes about what has to happen. And now I just have to have time to finish it. I've been very short on time because like I said, I picked up more editing work again. I keep doing this. This is the problem is I'm like pulled in a million directions.
Yeah.
And so I have like deadlines for my client's work I have to return to her. So I'm probably going to finish it later tonight, which means hopefully tomorrow I'll get to finish writing that scene. But I also was like, you know what? I don't have enough on my plate. I should start scheduling some of these interviews with authors. Over at That Pretentious Book Club, we've gotten every now and then we have publicists reach out to us to ask if we want to interview these authors. And I love supporting authors who it's like their debut book, or maybe not their debut, but they just want to get the word out. Like I love doing that stuff. And we don't really do bonus episodes over there, but we've always meant to. And so I just felt bad. I feel like I've disappointed authors so many times with being like, no, we're not doing that right now. And so I was like, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and do all of them. And so I've like been scheduling author interviews constantly.
Wow.
So I have an author interview. I think I have to record on Friday morning at like 6 a.m. And so then that's another episode I have to edit in the time that I would typically write. So the time I spend editing the podcasts, because the 2 podcasts and then the bonus episodes or whatever, that's the time I would otherwise spend writing, like on a different day. And so now that I have so much more editing to do, I'm like, no, and I'm going to write. I've also been working on farm stuff, but my hope is now that everything is planted that I can plant for now, maybe I can delegate more of that, my farm time, to writing. So I just got to like be flexible and work around my schedule, but I'm not like, what's weird is I'm really flexible in some ways. When it comes to like my to-do list, I'm not flexible at all, which is ridiculous because I should be, because the only person telling me to get it done is me. And the only person,
the one thing you solely are in charge of.
Yeah, like it's the one thing no one's affected by but me. So I just need to get over that and be more flexible so I can actually finish that. But my hope is that I will get to at least finish writing the scene tomorrow, and then I'll be over the hump, I'm hoping. And then I'll get to finish rewriting. I have like 75 pages left to rewrite. Like that's it.
Right.
Which is so easily like 2 or 3 days of work, because rewriting is really difficult.
Oh gosh, I can spend hours on like one paragraph, and then I'm finally like moving on for my own sanity.
Yeah, I spent like 2 weeks on the first, working every single day for a few hours a day, at least, on the first 200 pages. And I was like, at the second week, at some point, I was like, I feel like it did not take nearly this long to write this many pages, like all of the time I've spent working on it. And it hasn't. Rewriting is so much harder because you have to like reread and reread the same portion until you figure out what was wrong with it and how to fix it and how to rewrite it. And then remember, like, what else did I change that I have to make accurate now? And then go and put your notes all the way at the end to make sure you know what to go back and check for, which, by the way, hot tip, guys, like if there's something you need to remember so that there's not going to be plot holes, put it all at the end of the document as a checklist, and then go back on your next edit and make sure you've hit all of those little things so you don't make a plot hole or start a subplot you forget to finish. Because I think I used to do that. But anyways, it's mind bending because also, like I think I said before, I'm like resequencing events, which means when I read another scene, it's so hard because then I have to read the scene not only for like accuracy, style, I also have to read it for, does this make sense in the new sequence?
Should they know this yet?
Exactly. Should they know this yet? And so so it's been a challenge. I feel like that was a very long ramble, and I'm sorry if that bored you guys, but that's where I'm at with writing. And I'm just so impressed that you finished another book and you're working on a new one. But I'm jealous, but in a way that like I'm just so happy for you. And I want it to be me. I too want to be there.
Yeah.
But
you can get there.
Thanks.
It's okay. You will. And then it'll be so satisfying because you put all the work into it.
Yeah. And then I'll feel like when I'm querying it, I'll really feel like I gave it my best shot. Like I'm not going to do another rewrite after this. Like if I were to find a literary agent and they wanted some changes made, sure. But I'm not going to do another full rewrite of this book. I feel like I've already given a lot to it because I've already queried it before too. So this is kind of my last ditch effort on this one, which I think it's got market potential. I think it's a good story. I think a lot of the writing is actually still fairly high quality. So I'm hoping I'll consider it all high quality, at least for the time being, at least for the next few years when I'm sure I'll look back and go, oh, it's horrible. I'm such a good writer now. And I was such a garbage writer then, because it's always what I do. But if I can just even go a few years before feeling like that, I'll feel like I've done my due diligence on it. I just want to get this done and get it queried so I know that I gave it its best shot. Like I honored the story the best that I could. And then I can move on. I just want to move on.
I like similarly, but also opposite. I'm just really excited that once I get all of these books edited, I will be able to query multiple things at the same time. And I feel like that ups my odds of getting an agent. And so like just I for many, many years was like, I'm just going to put all my energy into this one series. And I don't really regret it because I do feel like that series is really strong now. But there is also like a comfort and an excitement in having multiple things to query so that the odds are in your favor more so.
That's
so
what it feels
there's
like,
there's no harm in having it. Even if you put it aside again, you can always requery it later if the market turns or something like that.
Exactly. That's how I always feel, because I have like a couple other books that I've started and gotten like about 100 pages in on. So like essentially approximately a third of the way. And I'm like, I could just finish those and like then I would have more to query, which just makes me feel better at the very least. But you never know what someone will like. So
true.
That is true. So now I'm jealous because now you've got that going for you, but I'm also so happy for you because it feels so good to have multiple like finished books under your belt, like especially in like a small time frame.
Yes, it's pretty awesome. So I highly recommend.
highly recommend writing a bunch of books in 1 year and also keeping up with your Goodreads reading list.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe I should have described you as a goddess and not a princess earlier.
That's really what I was going for. That's the lipstick. It's just a power move to match who I am now.
Yeah, now that you're this like supernatural writing goddess.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Was there anything else you want to share about your writing experience this week with the listeners?
No, that's about it.
Cool. Cool. Well, if you guys want to keep up with us during the week, you can certainly do so. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We are the Scripturient Society. If you guys want to check out our merch, we have some actually really cool merch. I didn't go into a lot of detail last episode, but there's like a really pretty notebook. There's like a really cute t-shirt, and there's even a laptop case that's got our Lacuna Matata joke on it. It means you should worry. So it's fun. And there's also just some other Scripturient Society stuff. So go check out storysirenstudio.com if you want to check that out. That is our production company. Our episodes are up there. There's more details about Chris and I and how we got to know each other and how we got started with the pod. So if you guys want to see that stuff, you can. I think my book is somewhere up on that website too, which I always forget about because I'm apparently horrible at marketing my own book, which is absurd. But you guys go check it out. We also have merch for Story Siren Studio. I could feel my husband looking at me and it distracted me.
Creepy.
I know, it was creepy. Anyways, now I have to like mark a time code to go back and erase my nonsense. If you guys want to join our writings group, you can do that too. You can join us on Patreon. Again, it's Story Siren Studio. So far, no one's really taken us up on it. I just wanted you guys to know. So if you go there and you're like, there's no comments, you can be the very first. Don't you want to be the first? And it's free. So to join the writing group is free completely. If you want to support us there, you totally can. You can join one of our tiers, and then you can also enjoy some free TPBC like extra content if that's what you want. And we can put more Scripturient Society content on there too if you guys want to see that. We will at some point anyways. But the writing group is literally you just put in a comment, whatever you're thinking about writing, feeling about writing. If you guys want to talk about when you can break the rules or not, go for it. We can all just talk about what we're working on there, and it's delightful. It's great fun. But you can also do that by messaging us. If you're like, I don't want to go to Patreon, that's fine. You can also message us you can also message us on Instagram and TikTok, or email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. So go reach out, talk to us. If you guys wouldn't mind giving us 5 stars, that would be excellent. We love to know what you guys are thinking and feeling about us. And if there's something you guys want us to cover on the pod, we are so thrilled to do so. We would love some suggestions from you guys. So message us. We will listen. We will take it very much into account. And I think that's everything I've got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.